Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for tonight's Tulane Family webinar, Sex and Healthy Relationships, Respect, Consent, and Care. This is a topic that is very important to us at Tulane. I am so grateful to have colleagues across campus who educate and support our students in this whole realm that is multifaceted. And so you'll see that as they talk about their responsibilities, their areas of campus, their background, and what they bring to helping our students and our community have a culture of respect, consent, and care around sex and healthy relationships. So we're really glad that parents have joined us for this topic tonight. And we present this in the summer for the families of incoming new students, because our hope and our goal for you would be that you will listen to this information, hear about how we approach this, see and receive some of the resources that are explained, and that before your student starts here at Tulane, that you can use this information as a guide for some conversation that you will have with your student before they arrive. We think that that's really helpful if you've done that and you've built that into what you have already taught and worked with your student around in terms of this whole topic. So I'm very happy to show you who our different panelists will be tonight. And so they're listed here in alphabetical order, so you'll have that information when you get the slides. So I'll ask them each to just briefly introduce themselves, and then when we get into the content, we're going to go in a little bit different order. So I'll turn things over first to Julia, if you would give that introduction of yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. So happy to be here tonight. My name's Julia Broussard. I serve as the Assistant Provost for Title IX Compliance and Education, and the Title IX Coordinator here at Tulane. As you can maybe see from the letters behind my name, my background is in clinical social work. I've been at Tulane um, 13 years now, and always in roles where I had a lot to do with our sexual violence prevention and response work. So excited to talk more with y'all about that. And then I think I'm handing it off to Baileigh.
Hi everyone, my name is Baileigh Evans. I'm the Assistant Director of the Well for Health Promotion over in Campus Health, and I'm also the advisor to our student organization, Sexual Aggression Peer Hotline and Education, also known as SAFES, and they operate our 24/7 confidential hotline, but we'll talk about that later. But in my role in the Well, we are a division of Campus Health that focuses on public health, so we take the proactive stance against, in this particular situation, sexual violence prevention and sexual literacy. And before we get to the other sides of things that a lot of my colleagues work on here, but ideally, what our job is just working with the students, like boots to the ground, and providing them with education and information on public health issues related to sexual literacy and sexual violence prevention. And I am going to pass it to Kyle.
Hey, everyone. My name is Kyle Pearson. I'm the Director of Case Management and Victim Support Services. The letters after my name are also indicative of a social work background, but those AAC, ACC are coaching credentials, specifically coaching credentials for folks with executive function concerns. That's from a previous job, but I've held on to it. So I will pass it on to Margaret.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Margaret Pitre, and I am the Director of Student Conduct for the university. The Office of Student Conduct oversees all reports of misconduct from our students, whether they come to us from students themselves or faculty, staff, other colleagues on campus. We oversee decision making by our students and try and help students find the understanding of decisions and their consequences. So we oversee the code of student conduct in our office. We, as a team of hearing officers, will meet with students and try and help them learn from their mistakes and move forward. So part of that adjudication is intersecting with my colleagues here in Title IX. The Office of Student Conduct does oversee sexual misconduct adjudications as well.
So at this point, I'm going to ask Baileigh if she would give a little more depth in the description of how the health promotion aspect of campus health and wellness addresses this topic and just the various aspects of your work.
Yes, of course. So as I mentioned, I'm the Assistant Director of the Well for Health Promotion, and the Well for Health Promotion focuses on public health concerns, particularly in 4 areas. We have sexual health, sexual violence prevention, alcohol and other drugs, and mental health and well-being. My side of the house, I like to call the sexual respect side of the well, and that includes sexual literacy and sexual violence prevention. And when we're talking about sexual health and sexual violence prevention and sexual respect, you cannot talk about prevention or violence prevention without talking about sexual health, and vice versa. The two are very much interconnected. So the way that we approach this is from a proactive harm reduction lens. So we understand that when students are coming to college for the first time, they are coming from various walks of life, various types of education types, with states with different legislations that center around sexual violence prevention and sexual literacy. And so what we do in several steps, and we'll go in to explain what those are briefly, is give them a baseline coming in so that we know all students have this baseline of what sexual literacy is and sexual respect. And then in addition to sexual violence prevention and what the expectations are of students coming into campus. And then in addition to that, once they're here, we do some more fun programming. So before they even arrive at campus, all new students are required to participate in our 2 online modules. One is that's through this company called Learn World, and they've all gotten emails on these. And what they do is they go in there and they log in. It's completely free, and they receive education on sexual literacy. And so this provides information on safer sex supplies, where you can find them on campus, how to engage in safer sex practices, normalizing the idea that not everyone has sex when they come to campus. Some people do have sex when they come to campus, and we fall in this spectrum of in between, and giving people this level of sexual literacy as a baseline going into college, because we understand that everyone received a different type of sexual education growing up or from high school or whatever that might have looked like. In addition to that, it is paired with a sexual violence prevention module as well that goes over things such as consent, establishing healthy boundaries, how to prevent sexual violence prevention when you're out, and just like in the community. And the two live together, and the students take that before they even arrive on campus. And then once they arrive on campus, we have this really fun thing called new student orientation. If you have a new student, I'm sure you've heard about it. It's really big. And we start it next week, which is super exciting. But part of my job, as I mentioned, I'm the advisor for a student organization called the Sexual Aggression Peer Hotline and Education, also known as SAFE. And they are student advocates for sexual violence prevention that provide workshops around the topics of sexual literacy, specifically sexual violence prevention. So when your student arrives on campus and they are in new student orientation, our SAFEs are working with them and providing them with consent workshops, talking about healthy boundaries, how we define sexual assault on campus, what that looks like, sexual misconduct when you go through the conduct process, all of those things the students are having before they even start classes. So they get it before they arrive. They get it again once they arrive before they start classes. And then once they start classes, the Well then provides programming, whether it be on the streets of Tulane. We have a big street called McAllister, so we'll be out there with information, education about safer sex supplies, our campus health, and how you can have preventative things such as STI testing, get yourself tested, our GYT program, which stands for Get Yourself Tested, just as like a screening process. Where to locate supplies on campus, menstruation supplies on campus, in addition to sexual violence as well, sexual violence prevention tablings as well, where we're handing out resource cards, which goes over a lot of the information that my colleagues here do in their offices, such as case management support, if they, how to report a sexual assault, what to do if they suspect someone they love has experienced sexual assault, how to support someone through that. We're out there giving them education and information about that. Particularly this semester, I'm really excited to partner with these people on this wonderful call for the Red Zone programming. So this year we will be rolling out a new programming that is all about targeting the red zone. So every Friday, our students will see a version of one of these faces out there handing out supplies that are through a harm reduction lens to help students engage in practices on campus in a safer way. So whether that's going, out with friends and learning how to be an active bystander if they see something, or just taking a proactive step and covering their drinks when they are out just to be safe, we will be providing all of those resources to students throughout the first 12 weeks up until right before they leave for Thanksgiving. We'll be out there every Friday providing that. And then in addition to that, different teachers, professors will request workshops from the well where we come in and we provide workshops on sexual health and sexual literacy and sexual violence prevention just in like a normal class. Maybe the professor's out that day. So we are constantly rolling and trying to find ways to reach our students to ensure that we are educating them on sexual health and normalizing those conversations, and then also normalizing the conversations about sexual violence prevention and things like consent and how to maintain those healthy boundaries. I feel like I just went through a lot, but I think I might have hit all of the things.
Baileigh, could you define what the red zone means?
Yes. So the red zone is so statistically across the United States, it is more than half of the sexual assaults that will happen on a college campus all occur within the first 6 to 12 weeks of a fall semester. And so that is from the moment students arrive on campus, first day of classes, all the way until, which is about Thanksgiving. The peak is about 6 weeks in, and then it goes through, it also happens through the 12 weeks. And so we call that the red zone. And so what we are trying to do as a campus is to be proactive in preventing sexual violence on campus. And so our programming is here to shatter the red zone. So we are here to reduce the rates of sexual assaults and sexual misconduct on our campus and just in general, and provide education around sexual violence prevention and sexual literacy so that we can help reduce those rates, just and educate in all of those spaces. And so that's exactly what, that's what the red zone means. And yeah, I think that if there's any specifics, Penny, please let me know, but that's the best definition I have for it.
That was really helpful. Thank you so much. So I'll ask Julia to go next and explain what Title IX compliance and education is, and how what you do, manifest those the laws and the compliance expectations that are built into all of that.
Yeah, thanks, Penny. So Title IX is a law that governs sex discrimination in educational programs. So schools like Tulane have to comply with Title IX. And it very broadly covers a range of harmful behaviors that we at Tulane will often use the umbrella term sexual misconduct as a shorthand for all these behaviors. But it includes any kind of harassment or discrimination on the basis of someone's sex. It includes sexual assault, intimate partner violence, also called dating or domestic violence. It includes stalking. It includes sexual harassment, and it includes sexual exploitation, which is a term that maybe y'all may not be familiar with, but covers a lot of the harms that we're seeing in this digital age. So things like non-consensually sharing someone's intimate photos, or someone consensually shares intimate photos and then the other person threatens to release them if they don't pay money or engage in some other behavior. So again, broadly, we're calling all of that sexual misconduct. You'll hear that term used at Tulane. And as you'll see in my title, it's compliance and education. On the compliance side of things, part of my role is just ensuring that we're complying with Title IX and all the regulations that come with it, that we're also complying with related laws like the Violence Against Women Act that has some requirements for how campuses respond to sexual assault, intimate partner violence, and stalking. And a lot of that involves really closely coordinating with the folks on this call. So, working with Kyle and his team to ensure that any victims who report to the university are getting all the resources and accommodations that they're entitled to. Working with Margaret and her team to make sure that when we do get a report and a student is opting for some kind of process through the university to address that report, that we're, ensuring that both the victim, or we'll call them often the complainant when they're in that process, that their rights are being respected and upheld, that the accused student, who we'll call the respondent, that their rights are being upheld and respected. We'll often then loop back to Kyle's office to make sure that that accused student is also getting connected with support. And that as we kind of move through that process for addressing that report, that again, we're following all the regulations and laws around that. But we often say compliance is just the floor, right? We want to go beyond that. We want to ensure that we've got policies and processes that are accessible to our community, that students know what the rules are, essentially, like what are our expectations for their behavior, that they understand where they can go for help, that they understand the different resources available to them and the types of help that they can request. And we work really closely with Baileigh and her team on the education side of things, because hand in hand with that, we need to make sure that we've got students who not only understand the rules, but understand what it really means to kind of live out the values that we're expecting to see from our students. Baileigh talked a lot about respect. That's very important, right? That we're living out that value in how we interact with everyone, especially when it comes to relationships and, intimate interactions. And then also ensuring that students have the skills they need to navigate, again, relationships, dating, sex, all of the above. And that when something bad does happen, that they're responding to one another in appropriate ways. Are they being supportive of a friend who discloses that they were a victim of sexual assault? Are they being supportive, but also like holding a friend accountable when their behavior maybe falls short of our expectations for behavior? So again, really broadly, like we're looking at compliance as just the floor, and part of my office's role is to also work with these partners to think really holistically about how are we fostering a really healthy culture on campus? How are we kind of helping our students live up to the values that we want to see them live up to? Just a couple things I'll highlight that help us do that work. Every few years, my office does lead campus in conducting a sexual misconduct climate survey. This is an anonymous survey that goes out to our students that helps us get really good data on what is the incidence of sexual assault, sexual harassment, et cetera, happening on our campus. And then also, what are our students' knowledge, attitudes, and beliefs? Do students know what the resources are? Do they trust those resources? Are they maybe holding attitudes that, are supportive of a healthy campus, or maybe contributing to some of the problematic behaviors that we want to try to correct? So it just gives us really good data on maybe where we need to focus some of our prevention or response efforts. And then my office, along with Baileigh and the team at Campus Health, co-lead our all-in strategic plan, which is Tulane's strategic plan for both sexual misconduct prevention and response. There's going to be a link later on where you can go view that plan. But something we're really proud of, that we're trying to think again really holistically about our students getting the education and interventions they need throughout their time here, our faculty and staff getting the training they need to kind of also respond and support the values that we want to see. And it really brings together a ton of different campus partners. Definitely everyone on this is a really key partner and plays a huge role in that plan. But also thinking about partners like athletics and fraternity and sorority programs and our Center for Intercultural Life, and how all of these different offices can play a role in prevention and response here at Tulane. And I think I will pass it off now.
So I'd like to ask
Oh,
Margaret to go next.
Sure. Hi, everyone, again. So, as you can tell by the letters behind my name, I am an attorney. But what you'll hear me tell students, if your student comes to see our office, is while I'm an attorney, I'm certainly not an attorney for any of our students. The role of the Office of Student Conduct is neutrality. So, whenever we receive a report, as I mentioned in our introduction, that could come from a lot of different areas of campus. That could be someone self-reporting information to us. It could be some kind of roommate conflict, a professor's concern, as well as TUPD, or even anonymous reports come to us. And the Office of Student Conduct will review every single report to see is the information that's being reported to us in alignment with the Code of Student Conduct. So your student should have received an email informing them about the code and the obligations and expectations we have for our students as a university. Every student at Tulane, whether you're an undergraduate, med student, law student, online enrolled, everyone abides by and agrees to abide by the same code of conduct. And that's what we use within our office to determine whether or not a violation may have occurred. So when I say violation, I'm not talking about violations of Louisiana state or federal law, but really a violation of the code of student conduct, so a policy violation. So that's what our team does in conduct, is making sure that our students are making choices that align with that code. And that code is written in a way to reflect the values and the agreements that we have here at Tulane on how we're going to treat one another, how we're going to use space, how we're going to engage as a community so that we're engaging in a respectful way that continues to have the goals of the university in mind, right? Growth, academic learning, all those things are coming up within the code. So when we receive a report that may touch on what Julia just talked about, sexual misconduct, the Office of Student Conduct is the area in which that students can come to seek some sort of process if they have experienced some kind of harm. And we will go through the options with that student so they fully understand what to expect if they go through a process. I always, and my team will always be seeking to see the person that was harmed, what are their expectations and what are they seeking from our office? Are they seeking just to get connected with support with someone from Kyle's team, or maybe having a conversation with Julia about Title IX? Or are they seeking some sort of formal process that results in some kind of agreement or some sort of formal action taken by the university? So we walk through that with those students when the time comes. The Office of Student Conduct, like I said, is neutral. So we are not advocates. We are not sexual violence advocates or victim advocates or respondent advocates. We are neutral hearing officers and investigators that move through these processes just looking at the facts and the information that's presented to us. Again, like I said, while we're attorneys, we don't represent students, but we make sure that they understand the processes and get them connected to the right kinds of resources. So if a student is going through a conduct process, they are entitled to an advisor. We're happy to connect them with those people as well as making sure really that they're grounded in support. So whenever a student comes to the Office of Student Conduct, right, whether it's some sort of mistake they've made in their residence hall, maybe they brought alcohol into their room or whatever it might be, we understand that this is a high stress situation coming into the Office of Student Conduct, and really we want students to be well connected within the university when they're going through a conduct process. And that's where we intersect, as my colleagues have said, with one another all of the time. But the Office of Student Conduct is the body that oversees violations of our sexual misconduct policies, including Title IX, when they're reported to us and when the student who is harmed is seeking action taken, or in other extreme circumstances as well. That's a general overview about Tulane. I can say I went to Tulane for both undergraduate and law school and had a wonderful experience, and happy to continue serving in this role because we all know that part of coming to college is making mistakes and learning from them. So I'm hopeful that your student will, if they have the opportunity to engage with conduct, see it in that regard.
Thanks, Margaret. So we'll turn things over to Kyle now to talk more about how case management and victim support services operates and what that team is like and the kinds of activities and support that are offered through your staff.
Yeah, great. Again, I'm Kyle Pearson. I'm the director case management, victim support services. I think it's all kind of in our name what we do. Case management, victim support. I mean, we do more than that. We do short-term accommodations. We're on call. We do a million other things. But I think the big two pieces are case management and victim support. We're going to talk a little bit more specifically about victim support. But whatever category their case falls into, our work is to support students who are going through a difficult or complex situation. And that can be sexual violence, harassment, or something else that's impacting their well-being. And so, in terms of support for students and victim support, that can be anything from having, their bicycle stolen outside the library to, of course, sexual assault or sexual violence. In that specific category, we'll provide very generally trauma-informed support. It's non-clinical, although every one of our team members are licensed, either social workers or LPCs, licensed professional counselors. It is non-clinical though, but we get to use those skills in our work. And when I say trauma-informed, I mean, sort of one-on-one, direct practice trauma-informed care. Um, uh, and it is a private service available to all Tulane students, whether they're freshmen or in our med school. It's a private resource, not a confidential resource. And so what that means is that if a student comes into us and discloses that they were assaulted or experienced some sort of sexual violence, we do have to create a case and a report about it. Now, nothing has to happen with that. We're going to follow the student about how they might want to move forward with that. But I think it kind of um, it's a good time to talk about sort of the mandated reporter piece and how our office, which sits at the intersection of the student experience, right, is hearing a lot of these stories from folks and gathering a lot of information. And a lot of times that's how things kind of come up for us, and that's how we know that there are issues. Like I said, we manage the concern report in our office, and so if Tulane EU/concerns, I think is what it is. Yeah. I've said it a million times, but I forget every time. All of those come through our office. And so again, whether it's, hey, this student reported to their professor that they experienced a death in the family, or something along these lines, we're going to reach out to that student immediately and offer support. And what that can look like is, uh, helping that student with a formal disclosure if they want to do that. They don't need to do that to receive support though. So that could be academic support, just needing some extra space with some things or extensions. It could be changes to housing or a class schedule. It could be no contact orders between two students, assistance with medical support or aftercare, and again, sort of helping them understand what their options might be so they can make an informed decision about what they want to do next. Um, we also offer resources to students, therapy resources, connecting them on campus or off campus to the support they might need. Um, we also, our team is part of the on-call system, which Baileigh and Julia have had the pleasure of being a part of as well. And so, there is always somebody in the student affairs world available for students or parents. And of course, that comes in handy when a student needs something urgently or is in a crisis. Um, and I think ultimately too, our like I said, our work is trauma informed, and so when we're working with students, I could recite a lot of anecdotal experiences of where we might be able to shine a light on a blind spot for somebody who doesn't understand maybe some unhealthy aspects of a relationship, right? Either what they're sort of experiencing or how somebody else might experience them in a relationship. And so we can be a little bit more direct and sort of share an observation and hopefully help clear up some blind spots for folks if they're there. Beyond that, our goal is just to be present for students, to be available as long as they need us, because these are whether it is just, maybe your first experience or your first uh, uh, experience of symptoms with like a depression or an anxiety, or you experience some traumatic, event, uh, that can impact you beyond the semester you're in, and so forth. So we don't put a cap on how much we can support a student, how often, how long we can meet with them. I've met with students for um, actually undergrad through graduate school. So, we just try to be available and be an advocate in that way. I think that's a good sort of overview of what we do. I don't know if I left anything out.
That was very helpful, Kyle. Thank you so much. So I want to bring up something that always happens when we have, some of these topics over the summer, that is that transition between high school and university. And when we'll present this information for parents, they'll kind of anxiously ask, but are you telling the students all of this as well? And so I want to just shine a light on this, that your students are going to be with us. They've already been receiving education about a host of different topics through the modules that are part of the new student orientation arc of support and engagement. And then they will be here on campus with us. So it'll be kind of a wraparound service in terms of how this information, the attention to these issues will come up for them, and how it kind of they're in the midst of sort of this intersection of information. So this page just kind of shows you that while they're not here on the webinar with you, we do this for parents to present an overview of how this will occur for your student and what will be available to them and what some of the expectations are, and especially what all of those resources are. But this will give you a little bit of an outline of, how students will learn more throughout their time here. And so, we've already mentioned a few times the pre-arrival preparation. And so that is everything from the set of Navigator e-newsletters that they get to those required modules. And then we're providing these webinars for you. And then they'll have that concentrated time that Baileigh's already alluded to. That's the Hullabaloo Hello orientation activities that happens in that time as soon as they move in, and that first week where they're having activities before the courses, before their classes even start. And then we've touched on these different departments. So you've heard us talk about, some of these things. So everything from, again, Title IX, case management, campus health, student conduct, fraternity and sorority programs, embeds education about sexual assault prevention in their potential new member education program. There are sexual assault response resources that are listed in every academic course syllabus. So that information is given to professors so that they build it in, and your student's going to have 4 to perhaps 6 courses, and they'll have a syllabus for each one of those. And so that information is there. It is even just plastered around campus with stickers for those resources listed on the restroom mirrors throughout campus. And then there's a Sexual Assault Awareness Month in April. So that kind of shows you that it's just sort of everywhere, and it's administered, that it's provided through these different aspects of the university. And then one of the things that I really want to stress is that we in student affairs especially understand how young adults at this stage in their life and development like to receive information. And so oftentimes in this stage for them as emerging adults, they are more open to learning from peers, or peers who have a little bit more time at the university and experience. And so we really try to leverage that for all that we can. And so, everything from the way the first year seminar peer mentors also mention some of these activities and resources and encourage them to take advantage of different information tabling opportunities, or a particular resource, or understanding where to go, where some of those offices are. The resident advisors get training in this area, so they know how to refer students to these. And then Baileigh's mentioned several times the SAFE volunteers, and that particular group of students who get really specialized training and oversight and support from Baileigh throughout that time. And then even our peer health educators who also work with the WELL then intersect with this. So we just want you to kind of see how this information, education, support, and guidance comes at your student, is available for students in so many different ways, and just becomes sort of the fabric of the university for them. So another thing that we wanted to just mention are that we will give you, when you get these slides, and you can access them from the Family Programs website, there are a couple of guides that are especially developed for parents. And so there's one that's Join the Conversation, talking about sex and sexuality, and another that's talking with your student about sexual violence. And so these are from, it's a it's a comprehensive resource that was a collaboration between Campus Health and Title IX. They are being updated currently, and so the newest versions will be available by late September, but we'll post these links in what we give you so that you can access what's there and then see the updated version when that's available. Baileigh, would you want to say anything else about that, or did that give enough information about that part?
I just want to emphasize that these guides, although they're still being updated, these are not incorrect guides. The information is still very valid and there. We personally just noticed that some of our offices were named incorrectly because it was from, last year and we had some office changes. So I just want to emphasize that these are still valid and you can absolutely use them. They're just being updated to reflect the new changes in different offices across campus.
Great. Thank you so much. So then some other resources that we want you to know about are listed here. And so we won't spend a whole lot of time on this, but a lot of these things were things that Julia mentioned. So you'll be able to drill down and see more detail about those components once you access the slides from either the message that we'll send to all registrants, or you'll be able to find this information again at families.tulane.edu under the communications section that has our archive of webinars. So at this point now, it is time for you all to submit any questions that you might have for our panelists, and we're happy to help get those answered. So we welcome your questions. I will let you know if you don't have a question this evening or it comes to you later. Since we've got 4 different panelists and they represent different offices, you're welcome to send questions to me at families@tulane.edu, and then I will forward them on to the appropriate resource person. So if nothing comes to mind right now, you can always send those questions through me to these particular subject matter experts and the people who deliver all of this good resource information and programming. So I'm not seeing any questions, so I'll just make sort of a last call for questions, and I'll just open it up to our panelists if there's anybody that wants to make any final comment to share with our audience tonight. Does anybody have anything else you want to mention? Okay, then I think that we will end here, and we want to thank you all for joining us and tell you how much we appreciate your interest in this topic and your willingness to engage in this, learn about how we support your students. And we do really encourage you to have a conversation before your student arrives, but then know that this is sort of the arc of how this support is offered and education. And so you'll know what kinds of things are going on throughout the year. And at different times through the family newsletter, I'll mention when there are some of these big events that are coming up on campus that are like a theme month for education or those kind of things too. So you'll be able to ask your student if they've participated in those things, or if they, you'll have some conversation starters for this topic as the year goes on. So I think we'll all say good night, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.